Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's session of Healing from the Inside Out. So today I have my co-hosts with me, Leslie Gaudet and CJ.C. Boyd, and we're talking about something that we all felt that is not talked about enough. So when we talk about this show was originally about healing and health and bringing that body together, but unfortunately, there's a lot of people slipping through those cracks and they're really not getting the attention they deserve. So these ladies have agreed to highlight some of those people with me, and we're going to be talking about the foster care system today. I have to tell you that going through some of the information, I was very specific in targeting certain things because they were just things that came to my mind from being in a system. And some of the numbers that came back were overwhelming. And I felt like we're really failing these kids. Like we could do better as a community. And these children are our future. So it doesn't say much for us and the future of our generations if we're losing track of so many people, right? So I just wanted to, so there's been a decline in the people that have been going into foster care. And part of that was because during COVID, there wasn't those mandatory reporters like schools and healthcare, which is kind of sad in and of itself, which means those people were stuck in a very bad situation. But I just want to read this to you because this was like wild because we were talking about sex trafficking last week, and we were saying that we you started off by saying, you know, the foster care system and how they were, you know, were probably trafficked, and all of this correlates to what we, you know, what you had said, and I just thought it was alarming. So we're just talking about California here. In California, there are over 16,000 youth waiting to be adopted, with 71,000 waiting nationally. Every year, 4,000 youth age out of California alone, with 65% leaving foster care at age 18 without a place to call a home. A significant portion, over 1/3 of have aged out 19-year-olds experience homelessness, and more than 40% resort to couch surfing in couch surfing, right? So in Los Angeles, approximately 36% of chronically homeless youth reported involvement in foster care at some point in their lives. The issue extends to human trafficking, where a substantial percent of those rescued, ranging between 60 to 90%, come from the foster care system. Nationally, more than 23,000 children age out of the U.S. Care for system every year at the point of reaching 18. And another 20% of these children will become instantly homeless. So we're looking at 4,600 kids a year just aging out. So then the other thing was that when you look at the kids that are being adopted, they're 4 and 5-year-old children specifically, younger than 4 or 5, with the national average at 5. So anybody that gets past that age is less likely to be adopted. And you know, so they were talking about kinship and all this other stuff, but we'll get into that. So in your research, Leslie, CJ, what was most upsetting to you about what you found?
Yeah, well, you were just saying, once they get past like that age, that I guess it's that age where they're still, attached to the parents wanting to learn. That's like that 5-year mark. And then once they start getting older after that, it's almost like they start becoming less wanting to have that connection. I would think, at least that's how I would feel, because they're probably starting to feel like nobody wants me. One of the things though that really stood out to me, which was, really sad for me to even hear about, was that many of those children that are aging out have disabilities. And so why are they, there's that, they're being marginalized, I would think, in the system, that nobody wants somebody, is basically what they're saying. We don't want somebody who has, a disability, because that means I'm going to have to like step up and do something, like actually be a parent. I mean, I don't want to speak for people, but to me, it's alarming to me that the only way that you are good enough to be adopted is if you are 5 years old or younger and you don't have a disability. But then you also look at the other things where you're looking at young people of color, who have, they are disproportionate, as far as when it comes to, for them to be in the system. There's like, it's usually like one in, when I was looking at the numbers, when I was reading through some of the numbers, like 1 in 7, I believe, of children of color. And then you go even further and you look at like the Native American children as well. Like their numbers are like they're up there as well, because again, we're getting into the statistics of, children who are, as they say, American Indian and Alaska Native. They're overrepresented. And in nearly every single state, when you compare their percentages in the foster care and total child populations. And then again, Black children on average spend longer in foster care. They're less likely to be reunited with their parents, their birth families, and they're less likely to benefit from the services, because unfortunately, and we'll probably talk about it, I think there's not enough support for those people who already are in there for the right reasons to support kids in foster care.
What about you, CJ?
I think the statistics that I looked at was like the people aging out. 30% of the youth that are in foster care are homeless by the time they reach 21. 20% are incarcerated by the time they reach the age of 21. 25% have a child of their own by the time they reach 21. And then 16 to 20% of the kids that are coming out of foster care scores less on a standardized test. And so to me, it's like the education and the stuff that they receive while they're in the foster care is not setting them up for good things coming out of the system. And it just makes me sad that here's a chance where we have to be able to educate and, support these children that are in the system out of no cause of their own, to support them to not, go down the same path or repeat the pattern or do the things where I just feel like we're letting children slip through the cracks. And it just makes my heart really sad.
Well, I was looking into the things that I really wanted to know about, because there is money attached to these children, right? So people are given a stipend to care for them. So I wanted to find out about misappropriation of funds, how many people are taking the children and the children are not getting that. They're not eating, they're not doing. Unfortunately, you can't find that information, but that's what I wanted to know. And I wanted to know what % of these children are abused. So there were a couple of things that really, they tried to do something like a kinship. So they tried to put them with other parents of like other siblings rather than put them in the foster care system first, right? And then there's congregated type families where you live in a commune, like group homes and stuff like that. The number of foster care homes has significantly declined. So there's not as many places to really house them. So that dropped significantly just this in 23, right?
Was there a reason behind that? I mean, did
They
they
said
say why that
they
was?
said it had something to do with COVID and not as many people going in, places closing, finance. So there were a couple of different things. But I was asking about the sexual abuse. So that's what really concerned me. So let me see. So they was saying that they're not receiving their resources. So a lot of what I read said that they would suggest a continuing foster care system where these kids can continue to get foster care to the age of 21, so that they can learn to live independently on their own. But if they haven't received adequate resources till 18, it just means they'll be aging out later, unfortunately, and they'll be kind of in the same place because the resources just aren't being provided, like the education and stuff like that. So everybody assumes that these children have a chance to be adopted, but the numbers yearly say that they don't, because everyone's looking at those younger children. So a large majority of these children are in and out of schools. They'll go to homes for a week and back, so they're in and out. They go to a home for a temporary, in and out, in and out, and some of them are worse than the others. So the average child that's in the foster care system has gotten some type of abuse, either from the home, and that's what brought them into the foster care system, but it's happening again while in foster care. So a lot of it was maladaptive treatment, like, physical, but sexual was second. So a lot of these kids are being like beaten, and then sexual abuse is next, either by someone, by both parents. Usually it said not one or the other, usually by both. So there's a lot of abuse going on, and they're not getting those services either, so it's very bizarre. I'm watching a show called This Is Us, and I really love it. But one of the girls was brought into from foster care. So the gentleman in the show was adopted as a very young child because he was left at a fire station, and those parents lost the child, and the doctor had said, you never really lose, you came with free, you can leave with free, and brought her to the window, and she saw that child, and that child was African American, and they were not, but they raised that child, and the child said, I want to give back what was given to me, and you kind of have a look at the foster care system and how they're going bed to bed, and they'd rather stay in an abusive situation rather than not know if they have a roof over their head. So they learn to keep their mouth shut in some of these situations, or they tell someone and nothing's done, who knows why these children who are being abused at home, did somebody report it and they got out? Who knows? But it was a very large number. So, I mean, did you guys find that? So here. So furthermore, I wanted to know about abuse specifically. It said the issue of abuse within the foster care system is deeply concerning, and statistics shed light on the challenges and risks faced by children in care. Research indicates a range of abuse experiences, including sexual abuse, which can be perpetrated by a variety of individuals within and outside the foster care setting. It's estimated that up to 40% of these children in foster care have experienced some form of abuse while within the system. This includes abuse by foster parents, relatives, and other individuals children may come in contact with. Unfortunately, the process of screening and monitoring foster homes has its limitations, sometimes allowing for individuals who may harm children to become foster caregivers. This situation is exacerbated by the high demand for foster homes and the turnover rate among foster parents, which can lead to inadequate screening and oversight. Furthermore, national child maltreatment statistics reveal a grim reality, with millions of child maltreatment referral reports received annually involving millions of children. A significant percent of victims are maltreated by one or both parents, and a substantial number of children receive foster care services as a result. The data highlights the prevalence of neglect as the most common form of maltreatment, followed by physical and sexual abuse. The impact of such experiences on children cannot be overstated, affecting their well-being, development, and future significantly.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's terrible. When you think about those numbers, you think about that data, why that bothers me so much is that we talked about this last week too. We talked about how, there's a lot of things that when they need to find the money, they cut services that are really important, services that could help, like mental health services, things I believe that would be helpful, especially even in the screening processes, providing more people to do the screening. They're taking away, they're moving the money around in places where they take it from is where it's needed the most. So it doesn't surprise me, these numbers, because if they really truly cared, if I call them out, if they really truly cared, then those services would not be cut. If they really truly cared, then there would be a lot more panels talking about this in our government officials would have more panels talking about this and getting those resources to the people where it's needed, making sure that you don't have, these children being placed into homes without having proper screening of the people that are taking them, or being maybe taken away from their parents for issues that might not be true. I don't know. But also, maybe not even, also the other part too, I've talked to several foster care parents, and one of the things that is also a challenge for them is learning to manage a child who's come from that environment, and how do they help that child. Because one in particular talked about a young girl who would not close her door. Her door had to be open all the time, her bedroom door. There, obviously she had trauma. I'm not going to mention it here on the show, but she did have some trauma. And they had to learn, how do we just, how do we let her feel like she's comfortable, let her feel comfortable? How do we allow her to know that or to show her that we do care and we have this environment for her, we're here for her, and not be pushing, because at some point you're going to lose trust as a child completely, especially if you've been through so much. And if maybe you've been through if you've been through several foster care placements, and every placement has given you some traumatic experience, you're not going to trust adults. And so where they put up they put up their wall, and then how do you get through to them? And so part of the education has to be for these parents who truly do they have their best interests of kids at heart, but they don't know how to manage children who come from those backgrounds. And I think that could be part of the reason why some of these children, because they do say a lot of the time the children are returned, which is sad. But they're returned because they can't handle it. They can't handle the child, their outbursts, because that child's been misunderstood and been through so much, and they just don't know how to handle it. So there's got to be educational, you know, things in place for parents who do want to be there for kids, whether they are, that child that just had, a bad experience of a parent who just couldn't take care of them. They didn't really have a lot of trauma, but they needed to be put somewhere, as opposed to someone who did come from a lot of trauma, whether it was sexual abuse, whether it was physical abuse, and now they're being put into a home. How do you help that child to feel comfortable to talk to that parent, that new parent or stand-in parent? And how do you help that stand-in parent not learn how not to push, and how to be able to support that child, to allow them to come forward when they're ready? I mean, I think that takes a lot of patience, but it also takes education. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
So I want to say that I don't think whether or not these children come from sexually abused or physically abused, I don't think there's a child in the foster care system that is not traumatized, because love and belonging is a basic need. And for whatever reason, some kids may be in there because they lost their whole family in a fire, right? So they're traumatized by that. And then they're sent to live with people they don't know. And there's more maladaptive treatment. So I don't think there's a child that's gone through the foster care system that comes out without trauma. But I think that what's really important is that those services are not waiting until they go to live with these homes. These services should be part of whatever curriculum they have. So if they do have to go to school or do whatever they have to do, but they do need counseling because they just got through something. And just because you removed the source of their pain doesn't mean the pain has been dealt with and went away. So putting it in a closet doesn't make it any better than if it's out in the open. So they should really be working on those children. Those services should be available to them along with the education, but that's part of their education. They need to know that they didn't do anything wrong. This is not your fault. This is not a normal situation. There is such a thing as love and belonging. Because that child somehow internalizes that and feels like if they were a better kid or if they did this, other kids are loved and I'm not. So they do have all kinds of traumas because they are violated at a very young age. Just taking away basic love and belonging is a violation of their human rights because that's everybody's right? And then they're not giving basic necessities like food and water. So, and then there really should be, like you said, services for before they go in. So I don't think there should be such a turnaround. I think there should be a mediator before they go. This child has this, and this. But a lot of times it's emergency services. These kids are coming out of one situation and they need to put them in a place right away. So there's no one talking to them and they just hope it works out. But being returned is even worse. You're re-traumatizing that child. Even this family doesn't like me, you know what I mean? So they're just going to all these places that are basically rejecting them. And then they finally get to a place that's open arms. Well, at this point, these kids just aren't ready to trust. And, because their trust has been violated from the very beginning. So it's not about learning to trust. They don't know what trust is. You learn to trust because someone gives you a reason to. It's not something that's born in you. When you touch things and it says hot, or someone picks you up when you have a need and that you can count on them, that's how those trust relationships form. But if you don't have any of that, there's no trust. So everything we do from the time we're children is about learning to trust, learning to understand no and yes and left and right, all that crazy stuff in between. But it's learning how. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that we need to get a lot more of the schools involved, a lot more in the communities. I mean, there's boys and girls clubs popping up all over the place. Those are not just meant to be take your kid there to babysit. There should be people trained in those centers to say, here's what's going to happen. Here's a safe place for you to be, for you to learn these kinds of things. And I think the school system is letting people down right, left, and center. People send their children to school and they expect the teachers to teach them everything. There has to be something in place in the schools, like the counseling or whatever. In the school where my children went, the counselor was basically, here's the things you need to learn how to get through high school and get on to college. It's none of those things that are really important for kids to be learning the skills, and like you said, to be acclimated to be able to know things that they're not maybe getting at home. And I think some of the teachers in school, they're just an extension of what the kids get at home. The teachers in school, they're angry, they're frustrated, they're whatever, because they're having these children come in to school and they're acting out because they're not getting the love and attention they need at home, and they don't know how to deal with that. They're not quite sure what's going on. There has to be something in the school where there's like some form of training or teaching and go, okay, here's the deal. these are the statistics. You need to be on the lookout for these things happening and not just be like chalk it up to, oh, he's just having a bad day, or no, he's in trouble, so stand him in the corner or send him to the principal's office. There's got to be a soft place for kids to fall when they're in the school system. I think that's a huge part of it. I mean, there's lots of referendums and stuff to build new schools. I'm sorry, I'm not going to pay you another dime to build another new school or put money toward the school for you to use that money to fund the basketball team's clothing or the shoes or whatever for the athletes and the bands and all the things, when you should really be focusing and using that money to educate the children and doing the things that the children need to make sure that they're getting their level best education and being cared for as a human being.
Well, education has really gone downhill. I mean, if we're being fair. So I like that you said that the school system is an extension, because it is an extension. They are not meant to take the place of good parenting. Your child is only with them, 8 hours a day. That's a big chunk of a day, but only 8 hours a day. So that learning curve really has to happen at home. They have to be accountable and be responsible. And, a lot of people are working, both family members. So when they get home from work and the kids, saying, Mom, I need this, they're dismissive. And then that creates another situation with the child. Nikki Cooper, one of the other nurses that's online, she actually does this in where she lives. So she does help them learn how to deal with the children, and transition and deal with this behavior. That's what she does for a living. And it wasn't in the school systems there, and she went and helped set it up. And now they made it into a thing there, so it takes that initiative to get it. But there should be, especially post-COVID, the Department of Health talks about how they're doing all these initiatives, and they do have a lot of online resources, I have to say, fair is fair, about 24-hour call centers for people that are having trouble with mental health issues, who you can call to speak to someone. They have put a lot of psychologists in the school. But is that really helping? I don't know, because if you have one psychologist and 1,500 kids, or, you have a charter school where there's thousands, how many people can that one psychologist really see? So if it takes a whole community to raise a child, then you really need a whole community of specialists, right? So they're putting clinics in for birth control in these high schools here in New York, and they want to ensure that you have sanitary napkins, but they should really be ensuring that you're okay emotionally and that you're all right, because I hear about a lot of violence in these schools, and I don't think they're happening over sanitary napkins, so I mean, and nobody, and these kids are going under the radar. How does nobody see that a child is hurting that bad, that they feel that their only resort is to kill or kill themselves? So we're missing a lot here, and this is the future of our generation, and scholastically, they were so worried about the numbers on the tests, but they don't know how to they don't know how to it's been a long day, to tell time, because everything's digital. They don't have to learn how to tell time. So I can't tell you how many kids can't look at a clock and tell you what time it is. They don't have to sign their name. Well, why not?
Yeah. Or how many
so
kids can't count change back from a cash register without looking at their phone or using a calculator. Like, come on.
They're not taught basic things. Like, I mean, when we were growing up, we had to know how to cook, we had to know how to sew, and that was taught to us in school. Wood shop was taught to us, metal shop. So there was all these things, because not everybody was guaranteed a college degree. So they gave us other skills to make sure that we were getting out of high school with some formative skills that might lead to something else if we couldn't afford college.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of things are slipping through the cracks, but wheeling it back to these kids, I mean, 4,600 children a year is a lot of children to be homeless,
Mhm.
right? And that's only that's only 20%. And those are becoming instantly homeless. That's not all of, like, out of all of the people, but they're saying that 20% are instantly homeless as soon as they walk out of that foster care center. So what I want to know is these people that are discharging them, how did you discharge a child knowing that they have nowhere to go? Why weren't services provided? So they should be more accountable.
Mhm.
You know,
And
if
think
you,
about it. Think about it on the level of somebody's in prison for 10 years. They get a stipend when they leave prison and they get to probably go to a halfway house and they transition them back, or somebody who's been in drug rehab, but we're not doing it for our children. That makes no sense to me.
it doesn't.
There
Yeah,
should
and
be.
also, yeah, and also, you know, what comes to mind for me is when I did a couple of winters I spent in Mexico, and one of the things there is people, even though if they own a dog or not, all the dogs can run free. So, you know, people would let their dogs to roam free. Now that was just the lifestyle. I look at it this way. It would be like taking, if you're a parent, I couldn't imagine this. I'm not a parent, but I can imagine taking your 2-year-old child up, or even your 16-year-old child, and opening the door and saying, or 18-year-olds, whatever. You have daughters, CJ, you've got 4 of them, correct? You just say, okay, open the door, front door, see ya, have a great life, I wish the best for you, and you go like that. That is what it's like for someone to walk out the door of after they age out of foster care. Now there are extended programs, and I did find one. However, I'm still a little bit shocked at some of the specific requirements to get extended care. You can get like the extended medical, dental, transitional living services, case management. However, to be eligible, you have to be enrolled in high school or a high school equivalency program. This is in Washington. You have to be enrolled or applied for, or can show intent to timely enroll in post-secondary academic or post-secondary vocational certification program. You have to participate in a program or activity designed to promote or remove barriers to employment. Employed 80 hours or more a month, or you have to be able to show you're unable to engage in any of the above activities due to a documented medical condition. That right there, to me, if I was someone aged out of foster care, aging out, I'm 18 years old, I'm aging out of foster care, and you tell me I have to have all of these things, already I feel like I'm failing. And to me, that is so sad to even just read those, just reading what is required of them. I would be overwhelmed, and I would be I would really just feel like defeated. Like, how am I supposed to you're asking me to live up to something that you didn't prepare me for, you know? And that really, it bothers me.
Essentially, what they're saying is we'll invest in you if you could prove that you're worth it.
Yeah.
So, if you can prove that you're capable, and that's sending a very bad message to the child. So I want to, so if we can go online in a few minutes and find this information, that they need this, this, and this to get extended care. You know, someone's 18th birthday is coming up, or their 17th, or even at their 15th birthday, right? Because a lot of these children go for emancipation. They're not even staying in
Yeah.
foster care. They're leaving at age 15. They're
Mhm.
becoming emancipated because they just had it with the system, and they figure they have a better chance on their own than some of the things that they've been subject to, right? So, I mean, but that preparation should be coming long before they're 18, because you know, on their birthday, I mean, what are you doing? Handing them a bus pass and saying have a good life? I mean, that's really sad. That's very inhumane. Because
Mhm.
if they were a dog and we just left a dog on the side of the road, you know, people would be looking at it saying, what are you doing? You know?
Mhm.
you're neglecting that dog. But here, as a human being, they're not held to those standards.
Mhm. I
There's
You
got
know,
to
totally
be
agree.
some form of system, some form of structure, process, something in the foster care system that starts preparing them for this stage out. You know, it's not like you can't, like Leslie said, you can't expect someone to be like, okay, I can figure out how to do all these things when their main focus and goal in life is just to find a family that loves them. Who's going to be worried about getting a job or figuring it out when you feel like you don't belong anywhere, when you feel like the world's at, you know, on your back? There's got to be something in place in the foster care system that says, okay, when you're like 14, we're going to start this and we're going to try and transition you. There's got to be something to be put in place to have a system for when they are getting ready to age out.
they should really have that. Excuse me. They should really have that by borough or districts. You know, the schools have districts. So a lot of these foster care systems. So if you're in New York and there's a high population of homeless, so I don't think these kids is dispersed all over California, because they were talking about a specific county here that was worse, right? But there should be schools that are specific for them in certain counties, because I think this is just my own, where my head goes. All of these kids have been meant to feel like they don't belong anywhere. So giving them a place where they've all been through the same thing and it's theirs, they might feel a sense of belonging, because now they do have each other. They've somebody understands them exactly. Maybe they didn't go through the same kind of abuse, but they do have a lot of those same scars. So maybe them learning in an environment and taking care of each other, that would be that real kinship that they need. And they would look after each other to really, you know, you have to do this, you need to do that, and really push each other. Because we had talked about, I think last week, how that the foster care kids, they should be given homes, like I mean, back in the system. So you want them to have a job and you want them to have this to stay in the system, then create that job for them, because you're understaffed, right?
Right,
So they
some
can
form
be
of training program so that while they're in the system, you're training them to be able to be like, okay, I'm aged out, but I'm going to come back and I'm going to mentor and I'm going to be a big brother, a big sister, and I'm going to help do these things
correct.
to make a change in the system itself, instead of just being like, okay, we're going to feed and clothe you and hopefully get you out. It is a way to be a win-win situation. So like, if that person who's aging out, like, oh my gosh, I really am cared for and I can help somebody else, gives them a feeling of belonging. And then they also are helping break that mold of, you know, just getting people to the door and let's go.
And interestingly enough, that children that are abused, regardless of the type of abuse, tend to become abusers, because that's what they've been taught. So we're not just helping the people now, we're predicting a future for their children. Because CJ, you had said that a lot of these children by the age of 21 are having their own children, and they don't know how to give that loving belonging because they've never had it, right? So that
And
baby
so
cries.
now they go from the foster care system to a woman and children's shelter, which is just
Horrible.
elongating that same
Horrible.
thing. It's not any different. There's no different. There's no breaking that mold. And what landed for me was like when you're talking about like the school system. I mean, so many schools that I know, they're like so hepped up on their after school sports and the basketball team and the football team and all these things. Why can we not have a group in the community that's like, okay, Friday Night Lights, great. We're going to have all these people and all these kids meet together and give them skills and build them up and do the things, like everybody's in the bleachers, you know, cheering on the basketball team, wanting them to get to state, but we're not as inclusive or giving a shit about these kids they need a space to belong too. And I think we look at things in the wrong light and we're putting money towards the wrong things.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, if you can turn on any channel and hear about the people that are undeserved, right? They're not being served, but you don't hear about these children ever. You only hear about these children when someone died because they found them, you know, and they, you know, and usually it's their worker was overworked or something like that, but those children are written off. That's when you hear about these children. Only when something bad happens, right? Otherwise, they're not, I mean, aren't they the undeserved? I mean, let's face it, we have a lot of undeserved, right? But it needs to start somewhere. And what better way to invest in the future than investing in your children, right?
Yeah. And then on the flip side, I just want to, so some of the foster care families, parents that do the housing, do the things, it's a lucrative business for them. I mean,
It's
some of the places get paid a lot of money to take these kids in, and they're the ones that are found out that they're abusing or they're not taking the money. So if you're paying somebody to take care of a child, that money in some way, shape, or form should be part of it, put into a fund for that child, for when that child gets to the age where they are going to age out, they have some form of something to fall back on.
so they were
Yeah, but that
saying,
also, oh, sorry, I was just gonna
but
say, that also though has to be accountability too, on on the side of who's giving them the money, there has to be accountability from them checking on them, like, okay, are you using the money the way it's intended? I mean,
Yeah.
you can't just give someone $1,000 for one child, just, I don't know what the number is, I didn't look up the number,
it's
but say
pretty
that's,
close to that years ago.
right,
That's what it was,
so,
like $900 per
yeah,
child. I think it's gone
so
up.
so say you have 5 kids and you're getting 5 grand a month. Are you using that money wisely for those children and not doing it to make the 5 grand a month for yourself? There has to be accountability in the organizations or the government that is, the government, where they get their money from, to be able to go in and make sure. Again, though, I still have to say there has to be the manpower, and that comes down to having the money to pay the manpower. So putting the money back into these programs, making if childcare is important, because we say it is when we do for other countries around the world for their children, then they have to then, walk the walk that they're talking. And that means too, making sure that the people they're giving the money to that have these children, they're using it wisely. And I'm not saying to police them to every single penny, but I'm just saying to make sure that the child is getting the adequate, things that they need. Basic things like the roof over their head, the bed, proper place to sleep, clothes, proper clothing, proper food, they're getting those basic necessities. And that I think would really make a difference. But again, I know we want to say that they're giving all of the money to these people to do that, and a lot of these people are not maybe being good stewards of it, but there also has to come from their side. They have to be just as accountable to that. You can't just hand someone a check, walk away, and hope for the best.
Agreed. But, now they have this thing in New York. So we all know about the migrant crisis, right? So, I mean, that's on every channel. So now they think it's less expensive to give them $1,000 a month for like food than feeding them every day. So they'll give money to that. And listen, people need help. I absolutely think we should help them, but you do have to help your own. So you're worried about conditions in other country, but you don't care about any of the conditions in here. So if we can send billions of dollars to everywhere else for war, for relief, but we don't have that money to give children that are in desperate need, there's something very wrong with that where they're redirecting. And a lot of it comes down to the politics. And I'm sorry, I think they're all freaking corrupt. And I think half that money that they say is going over there ain't going nowhere, you
Mhm.
know. I really do, because it just doesn't make sense. If we have millions to send here, then why don't we have those millions to invest? I mean, I don't know if you've ever walked the cities of New York, but New York is filthy.
Mhm.
You know, I've been living here my whole life, and I used to hear stories about, you know, New York was this crazy, dangerous place. Well, guess what? Now it is. All those stories you used to hear are true, you know, and they're not policing any of the people that are coming in. So we don't know what we're getting, right? So we're helping people that God knows what they were doing over there. And but we're not worried about the children who are being abused. We're not worried about the school system. We're gonna cut money from all the schools. We need more money. So we don't care about your education. We can house you, but we can't educate you. So the people that are coming in are getting their healthcare benefits taken care of, right? Um, so Obama fought for everybody to have fair right to medical care, right? So he fought for that for this country. So now everybody that comes here, well, most countries, right, everywhere, right? So people come in here and they get that medical, they get that food, they get a place to live, but apparently even those places are so bad that they'd rather sleep on the street. So now we have a higher homeless population than they've ever seen anywhere.
That's messed up.
And this is not just here. They're not just coming to New York. They're not singling out New York, you know. They didn't say, oh, we heard New York's a cool place, send them there. This is everywhere. They're dispersing these people throughout the world. So I mean, last time, where was I in Las Vegas? I mean, I never, you know, it was here nice on the strip, and you go over a few blocks and there was so many homeless. And I was like, what the hell happened to Las Vegas? You know, it's everywhere. It's not just in one city or state. This is global. So if we're not educating our children that are going to make a difference, they are going to become those politicians. They are going to be policing our states. What does our future look like?
Mhm.
So I mean, if it doesn't come with the education, because education, whether it's online education, a lot of people are going to the online space now for education. They don't want to spend $100,000 in school to come out and make $17 an hour, and I damn sure don't blame them, right? But if we're not going to invest in the educational process of our kids, you know, and teach them good morals, then we're lost.
Yeah.
So I
Mhm.
mean, this is one system that's broke. The educational system's broke. How, you know, the political system is broke. So little by little, countries are falling apart, and we haven't seen the aftermath of what this is going to look like unless people start really holding people accountable. So let's talk about that vote. Because we do have a say, but people have to stand up for what they want. You know, someone's, you know, just says, oh, we're going to give you money for this. They have to be held accountable for that too. So the people that govern and the people that are at these high positions, they're not being held accountable. Not in
Yeah.
a way that matters. They're not. Because there are a lot of funds going out there that could be here that aren't.
Mhm.
So, you know, and I'm a firm believer of you did your time, get out. So, you know, if a governor gets 4 years, you know, and a president can only have 2 sessions, then why are these people sitting in the Senate for 60 years, 50 years, 40 years? Get them out of there. We need some new blood, right?
Yeah.
New ideas. So somebody to try new stuff, because and say this hasn't worked, let's try something else. But they can't get along. so so
That's the thing.
that's a problem. We got adults acting like children at the highest levels. So why should it be different at the lowest levels? You know, you
Mhm.
say we don't like where this is going, but it's starting. I mean, if it's happening there, why do you think it shouldn't be happening at the lower levels, right?
Yeah. Of course.
But that's what we're teaching our children. Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Definitely unfortunate. Yeah, because it's the top down. We look to them, especially to run the country because they are elected officials to do right by the country for the people. But yeah, there's just a lot of they can't get along and they can't seem to see eye to eye for things. And they cut a lot of really important programs that would support the people who vote for them or the people in the communities that they grew up in when because they came from somewhere too. But maybe they've just forgotten what it's like to be in a community where, you know, people needed help, and it used to be where people would get the help they needed. There were a lot of great programs that just started getting cut one by one. And I think that's where you're finding the problems. And when you say that, you know, unfortunately for foster kids that are aging out, like more than half really is, as I was saying, which is a number that just, it's unfortunate to me. And it makes me very sad when you have a disability and you are twice as likely to age out of foster care. And so then you're already faced with challenges that way. And then you're not set up with life skills. It's just like opening the front door and saying, here's your bag, here's a sandwich, and off you go and good luck. I mean, that to me is it's just a
Sickening.
travesty. It's a travesty. It really is. And we can do better, especially as you were saying, if it's for the press, if it's for us to look great on the global news where we're helping other countries where children are impoverished, I understand that. But you also have to look at, you can still do that good here back at home and help these people here in this country that people look to, thinking that it's the greatest country on earth to come and live here. People want to come to America for, to have a better life. Well, if those people have those hopes and dreams to come from somewhere else, start treating the people here that are here already with that dignity, with the children with dignity. Look after them so that they grow up to be healthy with a great mindset to do great things for the country. Let's start doing that, and help them to be better empowered to make better laws, but in place, especially for the foster care system. And then, and help them to start looking at, like, you can't, when you look to cut certain things, there's certain things, like, we can go into politics, and I know it's not a great topic to go into, but there's, just things that they could cut that are not necessarily that dollar value is required. And yet they would rather cut the things that are needed the most, and yet complain when those people are the ones that end up in going to emergency care for help and can't pay for it because they don't have health care in place for them because they're homeless, they can't afford it. So I mean, it's just a vicious cycle, and it's just we need to, as a community, it takes a village. It takes an entire village, really, I think, to raise one child. If we're, like you were saying, Andra, you grew up the same as I did too, in a community where, even though we were outside, and most of the time our parents might not have known exactly where we were, but the community around was watching, right? And so I think it's just, we need to get back to those days where people really did care. When that neighborhood watch sign went up, that really meant something, not just a sign there that now means nothing, but actually did mean something when it first went up. That's I'm hoping change will happen, but we just need to start talking about it more, and just keep talking about it, and talk to more people about it, and get them talking about it, and talk to our elected officials, and push back on them to help get them to start doing right by all of us, because the country they live in they're facing the same things that we are, right? Our youth are our future. So come on, guys.
Absolutely. So we do have to close this out, though. So I am going to, I'm in so agreement with you. This is going to be an episode 2 for sure, because there's so much more that we can cover on this. It's just crazy to even think about how many Pandora boxes this opens. So CJ, would you like to end with any last words?
I just want to say that we get, like Lily was saying, we need to come back home to what's really important. And I think, how can I get something better for me, when we need to band together and realize that we can all have all the things as long as we work together, and we need to work and build community again and bring it back home to community and have people really have pride in the communities that they live in. And that's what's going to start making the change.
Okay. All right, guys, we're going to thank you for coming here today and listening to this amazing topic. And hopefully, you'll hear more about this from myself and these ladies, because I think we just opened a box that we really have to dive a little deeper in. So thanks for watching and have a good night.